This isn't tool storage. Hey y'all, I'm James Wright, and welcome to my shop. I'm about to start working on a side table. This will be made out of white oak. Now that I've finished the shop, I want to do some more furniture things, and I thought this would be a great project to kind of do a lot of different joinery and show off different joints and different methodologies. This particular build will be a little bit different in video style. Rather than doing a fairly quick overview and doing this whole project in like 3 or 4 videos, I'm probably going to stretch this out to around 10 videos and do it really in depth with a lot more actual talking about what I'm working on and how the joints work and how to cut the joints, how to lay out the joints, and a lot more detail for things like that. I am also working on a set of plans for this. Right now it's about 30 pages or so that I will be finalizing, and when I put up the final video on this, I will have the plan set available for that as well. So that will be as detailed as I can get it. So I want to talk today about laying out the boards. What are the pieces of lumber that I have picked? How do I actually pull the lumber out of a solid piece? Because if you go to the store, you'll get a board, but you don't need a board in working. You need a whole bunch of little pieces pulled out of it. How do you figure out where to pull those pieces out of the board, and how do you do the layout and cut out a rough on it? So hopefully by the end of this video, we're going to have a pile of rough cut pieces that will be soon turned into a side table. So a couple things particularly about this project. One of the things I wanted to challenge myself with was to make the entire side table without using glue. And it's not that difficult to do, especially if you make the joinery all interlocking and fit together. Drawer bore tenons make a fantastic job of that. And so that was my original goal. And I thought I could do that because I have a piece of white oak with a very, very wide board. And I thought it was 18 inches wide because this top is 18 by 18. And so that would have been perfect, but the board was actually 17 inches wide. Oops. So I'm actually going to be laminating the top up out of 2 boards to make 18-inch wide top on it, which, oh well, that's going to be 1 glue joint in this. The rest of it is going to be completely without glue. So dovetails, drawboard tenons, all of the tenons are going to be through tenons that are drawboard. The stretchers are actually going to have passing tenons. So they're going to be full length inside the leg, and then where they cross, rather than butting into each other, they're actually going to pass each other and stick out either side. So one goes high and one goes low. A little bit about the lumber I got. This particular piece here is about 8 foot long, and this was they threw this off at the sawmill. I have a friend of mine who mills his own lumber, and he threw this away because, well, it's the top piece. He cut off the very top of the board here and then saw this and figured he'd cut down another inch or so. And so he decided to throw this away, but I went into the throw-off pile and I looked at this, and it's got curl here and curl here, some really cool, interesting knots. And this is what I like to pull drawer fronts out of. You get this interesting piece here with just kind of wild grain. And so that is what I got this from. This is a free piece. These 2 boards here I got from the same sawyer. I actually got, I think it was 6 or 7 boards like this, fairly wide white oak. And they're pre-planed down to 3/4 inch. So they're actually just slightly over 3/4 inch thick, planed down, and so that way I'll be able to smooth them out afterwards. And I got all of these for doing some work with him, helping him out, and he gave me some free lumber. And so that is one of the places I commonly get lumber, is get to know your local sawyers. For the legs, I bought these a long time ago. Back when I was making my coffee table, and they're 1.5 inches, they're actually slightly over 1.5 inches wide by about 3 foot long, and I got them thinking they would make great legs, but I never had a project that would work for it. And here you go, there we go. One of them is red oak, and the other 3 are white oak. If I remember correctly, this one is the red oak, and these 3 are the white oak. But I think they'll work fine for this project. The last piece is the drawer bottom. This piece is slightly less than 1/2 inch thick. I salvaged this from an old piece of furniture, and after taking the finish off, it's slightly thinner than 1/2 inch thick. So I'm going to be cutting out the bottom of the drawer out of this, and then this will become, well, the bottom. It'll fit into grooves into the dovetailed sides of the drawer. So that is all of the lumber for this project, and I can actually show you how I can pull all the pieces out of this. Now for a lot of my work, I would actually like this knot and fill this with epoxy and it would look great. But on this particular piece, I'm wanting to use a lot more straight grain. So I want to cut out these knots. So the first thing I want to do is come in and say, the knot's about here. I want to cut it out there. Now if I were really trying to make beautiful pieces, I'd probably come out here away from these cathedrals. You can see how these cathedrals here are very round, and out here they start to get elongated. When they get elongated, that's where I want to cut it. But I want to actually scrimp and see if I can get all the material out of this one piece. So I'm going to move the line back here to where there's a coloration difference between the knot and the regular wood. And I'm just going to draw a line and come off of that. Now a lot of the stretchers are going to be, I think 1 foot 4 inches. And so I can come out with a tape measure and I can measure out 1 foot 4.5 inches. I want to add an extra ½ inch onto this rough length right now. In the future, once I get the pieces cut, I can then bring them down to their exact size. And then I'm going to draw another line out here. And then I'm going to start breaking it down. So there's a stretcher that needs to be 3/4 inch. So I'm going to make a rough line somewhere around an inch, 1.25 inches, maybe an 1.5 inches. And then another one up a little bit farther. And I'm making these rough and I'm making them bigger than they need to be. And then I can label out what they need to be. So then I can mark off, I've done that one, I've done that one. And the next one is a 3.5 inch board. So I can come up 3.5 inches. Actually, I'm going to come up 4 inches from there. Put a mark right about there. And then just going to draw a rough line across here. Nothing special, because in the future when I actually cut that, I'm going to come in with a marking gauge and put an exact line of where I need that to be. So these then will be the drawer sides. And I can write that on there so I know in the future. And so I can repeat that all down this board until I get all of the items labeled out here. And what this allows me to do is most of the pieces in this are like 1 foot 1 inch to 1 foot 4 inches. And so I'm laying them together. So these ones are 1 foot 4 inches. Those two are together. These 4 pieces are all 1 foot 2.5 or so. Actually, these ones are a little shorter than that. So I can cut them out of this block, and then I have this smaller block that I can then use to cut all these small pieces out of. Now, because everything else is straight grained, I want the drawer front to be wild. And I know a lot of people don't like that wild look, but I really do. And in this particular one, the drawer front is 1 foot 1 inch long by 3.5 inches. So I'm going to be kind of playing around with this and find an area that's about 1 foot 1 inch, about 13 inches long. And I'm kind of liking having a little bit of this curl in here. This curl dips down into this wane too much. And this stuff is fairly punky and not a very good material. And also on the other side, this carves into about here. So it's not full depth at this point. So what I can do is find out where the full depth is. Something like that. And then I'll come in with a straight edge, and I'll come back from that straight edge, and I'll say, that's about where it's at. So this would then become the bottom of the drawer. And now I have to ask myself, do I want to fill these knots? Do I like those knots? Are those wild? Or do I want to move down here and get an area that doesn't have any knots but has a little bit less curl? Or I can flip the board over and use this as the front and have this spalting and wild color, but I don't think that this spalting will match as much with the regular board as this side will with having this in here. So I think I'm actually going to choose this area here as that is what I want. So I'm going to give myself a straight edge. I'm going to mark something about 13 inches long, actually a little longer than that. So let's go from here, well, it's going to be really close, there. So then we can come off of that line like this, and like that. And then how far in is that? It's 3.5 inches I need to come. So I'm actually going to come in 4 inches just to give myself a little bit of leeway. And 4 inches. And I'll be able to cut that off and trim it down to the exact size that I want. Then I can put this on here and draw it out. So this piece here will become my drawer front. And so you can kind of see how I'm breaking things down, whether I want that color, whether I want the knots in there or I don't want the knots. I'm always looking for a way of how can I fit it into the slot and move it around. Now a lot of people might think this is kind of wasteful, but this area here is really not very good for usage. Same thing on this side here. But I still have the rest of this board that if I want to work with another drawer front in the future over here, I have the material to do that. So basically what I can do is cut it rough here, and then I have this that I can then pull out of that smaller rough board. So now I have these all marked out where I want to cut them and how I want the pieces to come out of it. I want to do the rough cutting, basically staying away from the line and just doing a really quick rough cut to length. And for that I like to use a buck saw. These were fairly common on lumber yards or any place where you work with logs. Cross cutting, they work fantastic for that. And I like to tighten them up. You store them loose so that they're not under pressure. Tighten them up and then go to town. And I find these at a lot of antique stores. This one I need to sharpen. Voila! Rough, quick cut, and that's why I like these ones. This one I do need to sharpen though. The teeth are, yeah, they're getting a bit stiff. So there you have it. A buck saw is a great tool for just quickly cutting things to length and not having to worry about exact measurements or anything particular like that. And just set these in the vise, pick a spot, hack it down, and I'll have a rough board ready to finer detail a little later. Now, if I want to be more precise in my cut, or if I'm working with a longer board and I don't want to put that in the vise, I'll bring it over here to the saw bench, and I'll put one end over there on a chair, then I'll put the other end over here, and I'll start with the saw. This is a little slower, but it is a little bit more accurate, and sometimes a little bit easier because the body mechanics are a little bit straighter and simpler. So I'll just do that here. Or in this case, with this sawing split running all the way down the middle, I can actually come in between here and cut this way. That way this side is still supported mostly. And then for this thinner stock, because it's thinner, it has more of a tendency to warp and bend. And I don't want to use an aggressive saw on it. I want to actually take my time on this. So I have a much finer cross-cut panel saw here. And so I'm going to do much the exact same thing, only I'm going to go a little bit slower, which isn't much of an issue because it's thinner and easier to cut. But this saw is actually a little sharper, so it might actually be faster. We'll find out. There you have it. This might not look like a side table yet, but all the pieces are here and we're ready to get going. Now, this video is probably going to end up being a little longer than normal, and most of the videos in this will be a little longer because I want to go into detail. If detail isn't your thing, then later on I will be putting out a video of how to build this in one quick video, which will skip a lot of detail. But I'm also getting all the plans done, so as I'm going through this, I'm working on the plans. If the last video has been out on this, you will find links for the plans, but they're not out quite yet. I'll get those out when I actually finish this. That way I make sure if there's anything that if I'm changing along the way, I can change it in the plans. So this is going to be a lot of fun. You may be asking why I didn't rip all of these down to the correct width, and that is because that will actually be one of the first steps in each process. I like to leave them like this because if there's any tension in the board, these will change a little bit over the next couple days, and I don't like to cut them down until I'm ready to do joinery. So what I'll end up doing is trimming off one side, jointing one side, and then using that as a marker for actually marking how wide this needs to be, whereas if I do it now, I might be off in the future. So everything is left rough, and we're going to start on the process. So hopefully in the next video, we'll start working on the legs. I'm going to taper them all down and get them to the right shape. We won't do the joinery in the top of these until we get to the stretchers, but then the stretchers will be the video after the legs. So I'm going to be doing a whole bunch of little detailed videos where I really go into depth of each of the joinery, how to do the layout, what my thought process is, and hopefully get a lot more information into this series of videos. So I hope you like this. I do want to say thank you to the patrons on Patreon. Thank you for your patience and getting everything set up in the shop, and I hope you guys are liking a little bit more detailed, more information videos. And yeah, if you do like it, please let me know in the comments below. Let me know if there's any particular step you'd like me to show more information on. I would love to hear that. Also, if you'd like to subscribe and see some behind-the-scenes footage, if you would like to help out with Patreon or find out more about that, you can do so right down there. That's about it for today. Until next time, have a wonderful day.